Hello there and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I shall be reading from Broken Chains by Karina, Kantas. Prologue. Liz had a mission, a secret one. Sitting in a coffee house gazing out the window at an Italian architecture was not her idea of fun, but what she wanted was to capture the going-on of that building. To further her masquerade, a glass of Coke sat innocuously still untouched along with a small pad and pen on the edge of the table. The elegance of the coffee house usually brought in the suits, but not being close to lunchtime, most of the executives were still in the offices. A casual glance from time to time around the room showed no one paid special attention to her. Now and again someone would check her out, but there was no staring. What caught Liz's interest was who was coming in and out of the building. She noted in a small pad by the body language and attitude of each visitor, specific attention given to what they carried. Two men exited the building together but went off in separate directions. She jotted down her thoughts and justification. Liz wrote, leaving MI5 headquarters, one in casual dress, another wearing a suit. Why carry an umbrella when rain isn't forecasted? And the other appeared more like a lawyer, who wore a serious expression, the blue suit and tie, and a briefcase. I wonder if he's trying too hard. Could it be a costume? A guise? They walked out the door together and then never glanced at one another and went their separate ways. 2. Serious expressions. Are they on a mission? Who are they, really? Trouble? 3. Identification and destination. Subway? Car? What she needed were photographs. However, that would make it obvious, and she didn't want to seem like she was trying too hard. And just casually sitting in a coffee shop glancing out a large window for the third time in a row. No harm in that, is there? Her phone rang right on cue. She answered the call with one word, listening to the one-sided conversation, keeping her sight on the building with a serious expression on her face. She nodded at appropriate times, making sure what she did say was relevant and easy to lip-read. She closed the phone after a minute, knowing the call would have already been traced. Liz knew it was a dangerous game she was playing, but was determined to see it through to the end. She had planned to return in 2 days and arrange another fake phone call. Liz gathered up her things and carelessly threw some change on a table. 2 of the coins rolled off and landed on the floor. The sound of spinning metal seemed to echo through the room. Not wanting to waste time picking up the money, she turned away and exited the coffee house. She had an inkling of what might happen. She'd been visualizing the scenario for weeks before she started putting MI5 to the test. She didn't know when and what would occur, and it made the game more exciting. Nevertheless, the reality of the situation was very different. It was terrifying. As soon as she saw the black sedan, she knew they were coming for her. The huge car with shaded windows came around the corner, tyres screeching, and drove onto the curb, cutting off her path. Liz stepped back in fear. She knew she was in over her head. Liz watched far too much TV, in particular crime thrillers such as CSI, The Bill, and her favourite, Spooks. Spooks had become an obsession that had now gotten out of hand. Rather than recording the episodes, she would make sure she was always at home, sitting beside the TV, notepad in hand, anticipating the next instalment. Printouts of her online research sat behind the computer monitor, as did a job application to work for MI5. Not that she was serious about applying, again just research, but she was curious about what qualifications someone would need for a position in the Secret Service. However, it still wasn't enough. As soon as the DVDs came out, she was first in line to buy them. Liz had seen each episode a dozen times, noting the actors' approach in diverse situations, the resources MI5 had, and how the interrogations played out. The secrecy behind their double life seemed exciting and the dangers they faced thrilling. Liz wanted to know how realistic the programme was, to see if Tom, the sexy main spy in Spooks, really existed. MI5's website denied any participation in underhand interrogations or investigations, and yet the TV portrayed quite the opposite. And that's where the idea to write a thriller came from. It started as a game, a test, proof that Spooks portrayed the Secret Service convincingly. Would MI5 notice a person paying too much attention to their headquarters? Would they react? How would they react? And how anxious and curious would they become? Would she base her main character on her actions so far? Would the protagonist be more intelligent? Was she an average Joe, or was she going to be a spy, maybe Russian? As well as Liz pretending to be someone MI5 should be concerned about, thoughts about the book's plot and which way her main character would go played in her mind. It was just research, and she wondered if it would play out how she expected it to. Now, sitting in the back of the black sedan with 2 dark-suited men on either side, Her imagination ran overtime. It happened so fast she didn't have time to react or call out. 1 minute she was walking down the road, the next they had snatched her bag and bundled her into the car. How serious were they going to take her? Would they interrogate her? Was she in serious trouble? Maybe writing down that she saw a female agent packing was pushing it a little. Placing both hands on her lap, she squeezed them to stop them from shaking and inhaled the strong scent of leather and wondered how new the car was. As she sat in silence, the car did a U-turn and entered the gated Thames building. Liz wondered whether to play dumb or start asking questions, or own up and start pleading for them to let her go. On the other hand, she was about to step foot into MI5's headquarters and maybe even meet real-life agents. Wasn't that her intent? It was exciting in a scary way. Liz tried to remain calm as the car drove underground and parked in a dark, secluded garage. The man sitting to the left to her grabbed her arm and pulled her out of the car and started dragging her towards a white aluminium door. It wasn't until the second man took out handcuffs from his jacket pocket that Liz reacted. The driver had disappeared through another door, leaving her alone with the two agents. First she snatched her arm out of the grip the man had, then she backed away from them. "You don't need to use them on me. I'll come quietly. You won't get any trouble from me, see? I don't have any weapons on me." Liz opened her jacket. As she turned around to show them she didn't have a gun concealed, the agents took their chance and tried to grab her, catch her unaware, but life had shown her to always be ready and never turn your back on your enemies. Are they my enemy? Where did that come from? It's not like I'm a spy or working for the mafia. It would have been laughable, but the situation was now too frightening, and she didn't want to be there. And there was no way she was going to be handcuffed. Although the agents defended themselves, they couldn't restrain her. Using karate-chopping motions with her hands, she stopped the men from grabbing hold of her. 2 against 1 is a little unfair. I don't want to hurt them, but there's no way I'm being restrained. I was coming in quietly. Why did they have to go this route? I'm going to defend myself with the tools I know. However, when she elbowed one agent in his gut, winding him, and then finished off with a smash to his nose, the men had had enough. Bringing the flat of his hand down on the back of her neck, the unarmed man knocked her out. When Liz regained consciousness, she found herself lying on a plain white plastic mattress in a white painted room. Synthetic odour awoke her senses. Sitting up, she rubbed her arms, but it wasn't from a chill. The room felt warm, even though there was nowhere for the heat to come in. She was about to call out when the cell door opened. A woman in her late 20s came inside. Liz thought the woman's smile was as fake as her tan. "You've got yourself in a bit of a mess, haven't you?" Liz stared back at the woman. The grey pleated trouser suit she was wearing had to be designer, and the high-heeled black leather shoes she wore added to the woman's already superior height. Not enjoying the feeling of being looked down upon, Liz stood up. Even though her neck still ached from the blow, she held her head up and faced the woman. "Now what is this all about?" The woman sang out and placed an arm round Liz's shoulder. Liz shrugged it off, and the woman's sweet attitude changed. "Let's go. People want to talk to you." Liz followed the woman as they left the room. 3 security guards were outside the door waiting to escort her. She had learned her lesson and wasn't about to make the same mistake again. Even though the walk was a short one, Liz made sure she had a good look around the place, taking in the metal and glass decor of the corridors and the numerous silver elevator doors. As they didn't come across another person, she assumed she was in a secure part of the building, away from where the real work went on. The woman led her to a plain grey door at the end of the corridor. As she opened the door, 2 suited men got up from their seats. The room was small and square, sparse of decor and furniture. A grey-coloured table sat in the centre of the room. The contents of her bag lay scattered on top. A hand signalled Liz to sit in the last chair, and the woman nodded and then left the room. A small monitor at the side of the room caught her attention. It was switched off, but not before Liz saw her white cell on the screen. They had been watching and recording her, and no doubt they still were. "Miss Finlay, my name is Mr. Smith, and this is Mr. Jones." Mr. Jones nodded to Liz. He wasn't quite like the Tom she'd imagined, but he had a pleasant appearance, serious in a seductive way. He dressed to match. In a dark blue suit and polished black lace shoes, he looked smart but comfortable. Smith, on the other hand, was a rounded man, short with a balding head and scorn on his face. Jones picked up Liz's notepad from the table and flicked through the pages. "This makes interesting reading," he said, and then smiled. Liz didn't think there was anything false about his smile. She felt warmth radiate from it. "They're just notes," she answered. "Ah, so she does speak," Jones laughed. Smith took a beige folder from the table and started to read from it. Elizabeth Finlay, known better as Liz. Age 24, single with no current boyfriend. Liz swallowed hard. Mother deceased, father living somewhere in Greece. "Shouldn't be too hard to track him down," Jones interrupted. Smith nodded and then continued. "Income $12,000 per annually, $6,500 in savings at Barclays Bank. Oh, and you're allergic to peanuts." He closed the file and threw it onto the table. "Anything else you'd like to add, Miss Finlay?" He folded his arms and glared at her. "Call me Liz. No, I'm not sure you know more about me than I do." "Who are you working for?" Smith asked. "You know who. It's in the file." "Cut the crap, Liz." Smith slammed his fist down on the table. She shifted in her chair. "I'm a singer in bars and clubs around town. The Golden Hawk in Bridgeview Lane is my regular spot." "OK, let's start from the beginning. Why were you watching MI5 headquarters?" Liz kept silent while she thought how to answer. "God damn it," Smith yelled. "You've sat in Time Out Coffee House 3 times now for exactly 40 minutes, watching the front of the building and taking notes. Why?" The good cop, bad cop scenario was playing out like the TV programmes. However, no one was going to shout, "Cut, that's a wrap," she worried. "Research," she whispered. "Research for what?" Jones asked. "For a book I'm writing. I'm an author. Well, trying to be." Jones picked up the notebook again. "You see a lot," he said. When he finished reading, he lifted his head and gazed at her. "Too much," Smith added. "Is it a crime to stare out a window?" Liz asked. "Depends on what you're staring at," Smith answered. "Look, this is stupid. Do you really feel I'm a threat to national security? You're wasting your time." Liz leant forward and clasped her hand on the table. "You seem to know a lot about what we do and who we are," Smith continued. "Well, your names are certainly not Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith," Liz retorted, and Jones laughed. "I watch a lot of TV, so yes, I have an idea about what goes on in here." "Excuse my manners, Liz. Would you like a drink?" Jones asked. "Yes, thank you. Water, bottled with a sealed cap." Jones grinned and shook his head before standing up and leaving the room. "These are vivid descriptions, Liz. A couple of these people are intelligence officers and agents." "I didn't know," Liz answered. "But you had an idea, didn't you?" "I believe you knew who you were watching for, who you were keeping under surveillance." "No, you've got it all wrong," Liz whined. "I'm not the one you need to concern yourself with. Miss Finlay, we take all potential threats seriously. For all we know, you could be a terrorist." Liz shook her head. "Why were you watching MI5 headquarters?" he repeated. "Research. Yes, research for your book, you said. But what's your book about?" "Probably about a writer who sits opposite MI5 headquarters, taking notes and researching her next novel when she's kidnapped and interrogated." Smith unbuttoned and took off his jacket, which showed his overweighted belly, the buttons of his shirts being strained ready to pop. Taking a handkerchief from his jacket pocket, he wiped his sweaty brow. Liz got the impression they were in for a long afternoon. I hope you enjoyed listening to the start of this book and letting you go check it out. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.